My name is Melissa Thorne, and joining me today is Billy Wagner. Today's date is May 18th, 2019. Thank you, Mr. Wagner, for being here with me today and for sharing your memories.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. So, what are your earliest memories of being in Mount Airy, and when did your family come here?
My family came here, I'm not sure on the dates, but my mom lived out on a farm back behind Harrisville, off of now, which is Harrisville Road. My dad lost his mother when he was 6 and his dad when he was 12, so he got shifted around to different places, but basically he grew up in the Mount Airy and the Dietrich Road area.
Okay.
And then we came along, my older sister and myself, and then a younger brother.
Okay.
So,
and what street did you all live on?
well, we were born on Main Street beside the old firehouse where Moxley had his bowl shop.
Okay.
There in the four-unit building. The bottom right was born there. Then we moved up to the corner of Sunset and Main, and then Mom and Dad built a house on Hill Street beside Hill and Plainview Avenue, and that's where they remained their lives there. But I went to Marine Corps in '57,
Okay.
and come back from there, got married in '62, and we lived in an apartment over at the Plumbery, and then we bought a house on Hill Street, and then we bought a house on Sunset Avenue, and now we're living on Buffalo.
Okay, so you've kind of bounced around
Yeah.
within town a lot of different
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
What was Mount Airy like back then, and can you talk about some of the experiences that you had?
Well, it's a lot smaller.
Okay.
It was less busy, Traffic wasn't near as bad, but it was great growing up. I mean, a lot of times we would complain maybe we didn't have ball fields to play on or whatever, but we made do. Summertime, your kid, bicycle, ball glove, and a bat. There's a ball game going on somewhere.
It's somebody's house,
Somebody's backyard.
field. Okay.
We tried to make some different times, but it was a lot of work cutting the weeds down.
Yeah.
But there was hardly a day goes by that they wasn't playing baseball somewhere.
Okay.
And played on the first Little League team, involved in the first Little League in Mount Airy. Had 4 teams. So, it's just the way it was. And my dad was the manager of the Maryland State League team, which was a town team here in Mount Airy. And they played at the Legion Field. In fact, it was built on my dad's uncle's farm. And
The one in off Prospect?
behind the
Okay.
Legion, yeah. So.
Wow. And that's where your family's farm was?
That's where my great uncle's
Your
farm.
great uncle,
Yeah,
okay.
my dad's uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has the downtown changed from the stores that you used to frequent? Can you talk about some of those stores?
We only had 4 grocery stores. Mr. Brown and Lindsay Browning have one, and then my dad and his partner Smith and Wagner was right next door here. Then they had an A&P store and American store. So, and when the American store moved to this building, my dad and his partner put a restaurant in where Old Town is, Smith and Wagner's.
So there was a grocery store that they had as well as a restaurant.
Yeah, they
At
had
one
the
point.
grocery store
Okay.
next door
Yeah.
to Smith and Wagner's. Yeah.
You guys have been entrepreneurs all your life.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But
And-
they had, we had the Western Auto Store came after the post office moved out, and then there was a hardware store, Mr. Myers and Mr. Gendell's had the jewelry store. Mr. Barnes had kind of office supply, sheet music, music instruments, that kind of thing.
Did most of your neighbors work locally?
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The mill and the Southern States and People's Lumber and Supply.
Yeah.
And working in local businesses. There were some people traveled to Baltimore or Washington, but not too many back then. Because there was less than 1,000 people back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did everybody do together as a community? Were there any traditions that were shared or events that were held?
Well, the Lions Carnival and the Fireman's Carnival were probably the two biggest events of the summertime. And the Lions used to have a jousting tournament, Wildwood Park. And just, church picnics, different things. Of course, there's Bible school, and it's just small town.
Where did your family go to church?
Calvary Methodist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what school was like here in town? What was that experience for you?
Walked to school.
Yeah.
It was good up to about the 11th grade, 10th grade, and
then what happened?
I probably shouldn't go into that, but
Okay.
there was a lot of days it wasn't school.
Oh no. Okay.
But one thing after another. But it was great growing up. You come after school, we come down. Floyd Holler bought the Old Town restaurant, and we'd go there, play the jukebox, and you get a bag of chips and a 5-cent Coke, and it was just it was a small town, and back in those days, your two most centered places in town involved in community stuff was church and firehouse. That's just things going on in both of them.
Yeah, and then
The Fireman's Carnival, that was up Wildwood Park back in those days as well.
what were your neighbors like? Can you think of anybody in town who you looked up to back then?
I would say good neighbors, because to be a good neighbor, you have a good neighbor, you have to be a good neighbor. That's what my dad always said. So,
Yes, that's so true.
But it was, again, small town.
Everybody was kind of your neighbor.
Knew everybody in town who lived in the house, the kids' names, whatever. And then when we lived on Hill Street, we had a very special neighbor. It was Charles Norris, Buzz. He was mentally challenged, and he was our age and grew up, and he just was a very special individual. And we'd play ball in the backyard. We had a big backyard, but he didn't like going out in the field. He was in the bat all the time, so he was actually baseball's first designated hitter.
Oh, no kidding.
But it was just great. He was a very special person to us, and we always included him in a lot of things. He got involved in the firehouse and doing what he could do. He didn't fight fires or anything, but he would take care of the Coke machine, empty the trash cans and stuff like that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And you were part of the firehouse volunteer?
I was for 10 years later. Not when I was a kid. Later on, I think maybe 58, I think they started junior firemen.
Okay.
So, of course, I was in the Marine Corps at that time. So, but I joined the fire company in '66, I think it was. And I was involved, active for 10 years. So.
How would you learn about a fire? What notifications would you get, and how? Early in those days.
Well, the house siren.
Okay.
That was before monitors. There were some monitors then, but everything was, and that was even before the central fire board,
It was still down at the a downtown fire station?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In your opinion, where are some of the best places in town to hang out? That could be back when or today.
Depending on your age, you might go to McDonald's for coffee now.
Yes, that's the best spot to hang out now and get a lot of information on the town.
Back when I was growing up, Old Town, back then was a popular place in the morning for the different people. Just Sunday morning at the drugstore, that was a very hot spot. Because I remember growing up, come downtown on Sunday morning, you couldn't find a place to park.
Oh, cool.
People coming into the drugstore, having a coffee, and getting their newspaper. I remember one time, a gentleman had a Crosley automobile, a small Crosley. A very small car.
Okay.
And some of the guys picked it up and put it in the alley by B.S. Dorsey Company. So the guy, he come out of the drugstore, he couldn't find his car.
No way.
It was in the alley there. So it was.
They were either really strong or that was a really small light car.
Crosley was a very small car.
Wow. Just because they wanted to park there?
No, they just carried on.
They were
Played a
just
joke on it.
being silly. Oh my goodness. And were there any other organizations that you were a part of other than the church or the fire company?
Fire company, Manor Youth Athletic Association.
Okay.
Even before it was called MAYA, back, in fact, probably 3 or 4 years into it, we formed the Manor Youth Athletic Association.
Yeah.
Involved in that. Never joined the Lions or Kiwanis or anything. But now I'm a member of the Marine Corps League, which is an organization of former Marines, active Marines.
Can you tell me more about that?
More about it?
Yeah.
I could go on all day about it.
Let's see what we can get into.
It's an organization of former Marines, active Marines, or Navy corpsmen who served with the Marines, or Navy chaplains who served with the Marines. And we do a lot of charity work, do color guards, provide things for funerals, toys for tots, and march and praise. Well, we don't march too much anymore, but ride if we can, because a lot of our members are getting up in age, so.
Where do you have your meetings and gatherings?
We meet at the VFW,
Okay.
third Monday night, top side. We have like 91 members, I think it is. Probably 15 to 25 active, do a lot of stuff and all. But
yeah, great. And you also own a business, or you've been a business owner
Yes.
in town. Can you tell me about that?
well, but our mom and dad, my dad sold out to his partner the grocery business in '51, and he dealt cattle, bought and sold cattle. And the gentleman had the locker plant up on the hill, wanted to get out of business. So the realtor come to mom and dad and said, hey, you're dealing with cattle, you're buying, selling, you're doing, said this would be a perfect fit for you. So he talked them into buying in '53 or '54. And of course, growing up, we worked there, cleaning up, whatever had to be done. So grew up in the business. Brother grew up in the business. So then we incorporated, I think it was in '72. And just from there, I retired in '01. And my brother continued till 2 years ago, and my youngest son's got it now. So.
And that company is Wagner's Meat Locker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we used to have the frozen food lockers. It's a 6.5 cubic box in a zero temperature room. It had 6 lockers high. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people didn't, this was before the home freezer was a big thing. Mm-hmm. So if you had a side of beef or got a beef slaughtered, processed, didn't have room in your home freezer or needed a place to keep it, you rent a locker. And then, of course, if you had a garden, you froze some stuff out of your garden, so then you didn't have room for your beef in the freezer. If you had a home freezer, then you come maybe rent a locker for 6 months till you used up enough in your home freezer, you could come get it. So that's how that all started.
That's how that started.
Yeah.
So now I'm guessing that there's really no rentals of lockers anymore because that's kind of time the market's changed.
That smart guy in General Electric invented that freezer.
Okay. I know, wow. How else has times changed that you've seen since being here? What have you lived through the changes of?
Electronics, it just floored me. It left me behind. I don't mind saying it has left me behind. The barcode and the electronics I was sitting at a tavern after I got out of the Marine Corps, and the guy was in there, had the barcode on the bottle of Budweiser. He said, "This can tell you where it was made, when it was made, time it was made, da da da." He said, "That's the thing of the future." I said, "No way."
That's never gonna stick.
Was I wrong? So it's just, it's a whole lot faster pace now, you know. Information and everything is just very different.
Do you have a cell phone?
Yes.
Okay, well there you're with technology.
A lot of problems, but don't ask my wife about that. Because I bug her all the time. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What do I do now? I'm just not.
And then there's computers and email.
Yes, there is.
There is. So I'd love to hear if you had to describe Mount Airy to somebody who's never been to town, what would you say to them?
Great place to live. A little different nowadays, but it's a great place to live still. And there's a lot of things you can get involved in, you know, kinds of civic organizations and churches, and you can be as busy as you want, and it's
And where is a must-visit place that you would recommend, or a spot or a business?
our meat store.
Sure.
I just come downtown and look around. The museum's really great, you know, and of course the caboose. And,
Yep. Right across from each other, so
yeah,
it's kind of a
convenient,
one-stop shop. They
yeah.
could check it out.
Yeah. And you stop and get your prescription in between. You know?
Yes.
Because as we get older, we need a lot of prescriptions, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a good match, having the
Yeah.
museum there too.
yeah, it is really.
What would you say too about any restaurants to visit or parks to see?
Restaurants, you know, Memories, Mount Airy Inn, Mount Airy Tavern, good sandwiches, Crying Johnny's, Conchetta's.
There's
you
a
know,
lot more restaurants downtown than there was.
Yeah,
It sounds like with
yeah.
just Old Town, and you said before that was the what was the name of your family's restaurant?
Smith and Wagner.
Smith and Wagner's.
Yeah,
What
Smith.
types of foods did they make there?
Over here, that was mainly hot dogs and sandwiches, light
Yeah.
sandwiches.
Okay.
And the restaurant Smith and Wagner was your basic, you know, basic foods back then, you know.
Your American fare.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sandwiches.
Home cooking.
Yes.
So.
That sounds wonderful. It's almost lunchtime,
Yeah,
actually.
right.
So what do you think, how do you think the town will change in the next 10 years or 50 years? And what's your hope for Mount Airy?
As far as change, that'd be I don't, you know, it's going to keep progressing. They're going to have to change Main Street to something with the Flatiron Building. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I don't probably won't be around for too many more of them, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it certainly will, and it's, you know, a lot. You've seen a lot with 27 coming through when there wasn't any main road
Right.
coming through town, and
Right.
And a lot of development
Yes.
in outside of the town, downtown.
Right. I was just going to say, a lot of traffic, and a lot of it's not from inside the town. I mean, it's people going through to get through, to come in. You know, it's just the way it is. You know? But and thank goodness we have it for business-wise. You know, because a lot of businesses in Mount Airy. If Saturday morning, if you're not busy, you better be checking something, because there's a lot going on in town.
That's very true.
A lot going
Yeah.
on. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Wagner. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Yay.
So.